Well, hi there, Sam. It's good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Lily. It feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of research about my new pollinator meadow, and it's going to cost me like $10,000? Like, what is going on? I thought you said that a meadow is cheaper than a lawn. What is this?
So your quarter-acre meadow sure wouldn't cost $10,000. What are you shopping for?
Well, I was shopping for pre-grown plants.
Ah, I see. So this is important. Usually when we make meadows above a certain size, and a quarter acre is certainly above a certain size, it is not economically feasible to buy plants in pots or as plugs and plant individual plants because, think about it, you need about 1 plant per square foot for your nice dense pollinator meadow. And if you've got a quarter acre, that's over 10,000 square feet, and each potted plant that you're looking for probably costs about $10, so that's why I'm going to recommend that we establish your meadow using seeds instead of pre-grown plants.
That makes so much more sense. Well then, where do I even go to buy seed?
Good question. There's a lot of places that sell seed for restoration purposes, like creating a meadow, and just off the top of my head, those places include Ernst Conservation Seed, Roundstone Seed, Prairie Moon, Prairie Nursery, and Pinelands Nursery. There's a lot of options. They will grow seed and help you figure things out, including, have you ever heard of a concept called an ecotype?
I don't think that I have.
All right, so plants that are distributed around the country that have a really broad geographic distribution have populations here in central New York and populations maybe as far south as Florida. The growing conditions of those populations are very different, and so seed companies will help you select seeds from species in growing areas that are the closest to where you are, or at least your growing conditions. Really important. Usually locally grown plants do the best in those conditions. So that's really important. Don't buy seed from across the country until you can try and find a better local source.
Gotcha. Since I've been designing my meadow for pollinators this time, I was wondering, can I just leave the grass out so I can get an even denser flower planting?
Right, so I guess we started with you wanting to support grassland birds, and now it's like, well, if we don't need the grassland birds, do we need the grass? And I would say yes, even though your goal is to support beneficial insects, grasses are still really important. They may not produce nectar, but they produce shelter. These bushy bunch grasses are really important habitat for little bugs to sleep in and overwinter in. And many of the species you might want to support, the lepidopterans, moths and butterflies, well, their caterpillars need to eat plants of certain species and certain families, and many of them eat grasses. So if you want your meadow to provide for all of the needs of all of the cool insects that you want to support, then yeah, I would still include some grasses. And by the way, they can be really pretty too.
All right, well, it seems like having grasses added in and making sure we're doing things from seed instead of planting just plugs, as you called them. Let's get down to brass tacks. How much is this actually going to cost me?
Okay, so if we're going to plant your quarter acre meadow using seed, a very dense meadow for pollinators will be about 10 to 20 pounds of pure live seed per acre. And that depends on what plant species you use. And for your meadow, that'll be about 2 to 5 pounds of seed. A very flower-heavy seed mix, which flowers tend to be a little more expensive than the grasses, can cost anywhere from maybe $30 to $100 a pound. So it'll depend on the species, but we're talking a few $100s, not tens of thousands of dollars. Is that kind of within your budget?
Yes. So originally I was designing for grassland birds, and now I'm thinking about stuff for pollinators, and I mean, I don't really know that many plants. That's not really my wheelhouse. So how do I know what this is going to look like in the end?
That's a really good point, because a meadow for grassland birds is actually going to look quite different from the meadow that you're going to make for insects. And primarily, that difference will be in how densely the plants are arranged, the complexity of three-dimensional structure of all the plants. Actually, hold on, let me show you something. As I was saying, meadows can look very different depending on your objectives. Lilly Landowner is in a residential area and has a relatively small amount of land they're working with. And here's our stage. Currently, Lilly is working with lawn, represented by these cute little hash marks here. Notice the structural complexity of this lawn. The three-dimensional arrangement of plants is very simple. They're just short grasses, all mowed to be of uniform height. A meadow will look very, very different from a lawn. Here we have a meadow where there are large bunch grasses and maybe a few flowers, and there's a lot of space between the plants, quite a bit of space. This is a meadow that is for wildlife, a meadow that is sparse in terms of its vegetation. There's a lot of space for little birds to nest and run around. There's space for small mammals to find shelter. It's mostly grasses, but there may be a few flowers. This meadow, our wildlife meadow, we determined was not appropriate for Lilly's property because they don't have enough space. So we decided to go for a meadow to benefit pollinators and other beneficial insects. And that's because we have the small amount of space to work with, and it'll be a meadow that's very attractive to Lilly's neighbors, full of flowers, more regular in terms of its distribution of plants. And a pollinator meadow might look something like this. Now we have a meadow that is similar in terms of structure to the wildlife meadow, but the plants are far denser. They're packed closer together. In this meadow, there is much less space between the plants. The height of the plants is relatively uniform, but notice there are all sorts of flowers at different levels, flowers, grasses, and other plants that are beneficial to pollinators and small species that use this meadow as shelter. The three-dimensional arrangement may be similar in terms of the height, but the density is higher. This is a meadow that is more for pollinators. The way you arrange plants in a meadow by choosing plant species and the density at which you plant them will greatly affect what species benefit from this work and the way your meadow will look at the end of the day. Does that make sense, Lilly?
Well, that's great. I'm really excited for my future meadow. But yeah, thanks for showing me that.
Sure.
This might seem like a weird question, but this is my last one before I go. So where did you go?
I don't know.